Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to just pause for a moment and think about the basis of what you believe. I mean, the really deep stuff, consciousness, reality, spiritual truth.
It's a space that's usually, defined by faith or what some ancient text says. It's built on authority.
But what if there's a totally different way to approach it?
Hmm.
What if those deepest truths could be verified empirically by anyone?
And that's exactly what we're getting into today. We are taking a really deep plunge into the science of Raja Yoga based on these incredible teachings compiled by Swami Vivekananda.
Right, and the name itself, Raja Yoga, it tells you everything.
Yeah.
It translates to something like conquering the internal nature.
It does. And our mission here for you, the listener, is not just to talk about the philosophy. It's to get to grips with its revolutionary core idea.
Which is?
The sources are really clear on this. Raja Yoga is not supposed to be mysticism or something you just have to believe in. It's presented as an ancient, verifiable, experimental science.
The science of the mind.
Exactly, a science of the mind and spirit. And it requires zero prior belief. All it asks is that you're willing to do the practice and observe the results inside your own consciousness.
That is a radical claim. It's saying that any religion or truth that can't be perceived directly is, well, basically worthless. It just completely flips the script on needing external authority, doesn't it?
It does. We're told that the individual isn't small or weak, but is actually a natural conduit for and I'm quoting here, an infinite ocean of knowledge and power.
So looking outside for help, praying to some external being.
The yogi argues that's spiritually debilitating. It just creates dependence, fear, the sort of horrible belief in the natural weakness of humanity.
Whereas this system says the power is already inside.
Every prayer is already answered by the infinite magazine of power that's right there inside you. So Raja Yoga becomes this path of, ultimate self-reliance. It's about learning how to consciously draw on that internal source.
Okay, let's start with that foundational idea then. Experience as the, what did the text call it? The adamantine foundation of truth. That's a strong phrase.
It is. And if you look at the world, what's the result of religions that are just based on belief?
Conflict, mostly.
It's conflict. When your truth is just an assertion, my book says this or my prophet said that, there's no common ground. It leads to quarreling, even, historical bloodshed. Religion becomes just a bundle of different theories.
But the big religions, the ones that have lasted, they must have started with something more solid than just an idea, right?
They did. The source material is quick to point out that all these historical religions are based on the direct experience of their founders. Christ said he saw God. The ancient sages in India, the rishis, they declared they had experienced these truths. Buddha had a direct insight.
So they didn't start with a theory, they started with a perception.
They began with immediate, raw perception. So the yogi's declaration takes that and just applies it to everyone. If the founder had to see it, then you have to see it too.
That's a very high bar.
It's uncompromising. The text says no one can be truly religious until they have had those perceptions themselves. If there's a soul, we have to perceive it. If there's a God, we have to see him.
And if we can't?
Then the yogi says something pretty shocking. It is better not to believe.
Wow. So atheism is actually better than blind faith in this system. Why is that?
Because just agreeing with customs and repeating words you don't understand, well, it fosters hypocrisy. It puts your intellect and your beliefs at war with each other. The outspoken atheist, even if they're wrong, at least has integrity.
And this speaks directly to the modern educated person's dilemma, doesn't it? They often see religion as just an internal rigmarole of words, maybe useful for motivating good behavior, but not as ultimate truth.
And you can't blame them for that. People are built to seek truth, to grasp it for themselves. The whole promise is that when you have that direct perception, all doubts vanish, all darkness be scattered, and all crookedness be made straight.
So this is the scientific blueprint for getting there.
That's the claim. It's a method to get you to see for yourself.
Okay, so if the goal is direct perception, we have to talk about language. We often call these experiences supernatural. That word itself creates a sense of mystery. How does the yogi handle that?
Simple. The yogi just rejects the idea of the supernatural entirely.
Completely.
Completely. And that's a key step in making this a science. For the yogi, the universe only has two kinds of manifestations: gross and subtle.
Gross and subtle. What's the difference?
Gross manifestations are what we can easily perceive with our five senses. The physical world, solids, liquids, the light we can see, the sounds we can hear.
And the subtle.
The subtle manifestations are simply the causes of those gross effects. They are forces and materials that are perfectly natural, but they vibrate at a frequency that's just beyond our normal range of perception.
So a vision or a miraculous healing isn't a miracle from outside of nature. It's just a subtle, natural process causing a visible effect.
Precisely. For the yogi, observing these internal states is no more miraculous than a chemist using a high-powered microscope to see atoms. You just need the right instrument. Raja Yoga is about building and refining that inner instrument.
This brings us to the psychological map they use, the Sankhya philosophy. We need to trace the path of perception to understand how they plan to control it.
Right. The Sankhya system gives this incredibly detailed map. So when you perceive something, say a book, the impression first travels through the external instrument, the eye.
Okay.
It goes from the eye to the internal organs and then to the mind, which is called manas. Manas is the collecting, deliberative faculty. It just gathers all the raw data.
So Manas collects the data. What happens next?
Manas presents it to the next stage, the determinative faculty, or buddhi. Buddhi is like the CEO. It's the seat of judgment. It looks at the data from Manas and decides, this is a book.
And then comes the sense of I.
Instantly. The impression flashes with ahamkara, which is egoism, the faculty that says, this is my perception, I am seeing a book.
And that whole packaged data, judgment, ego, is then delivered to the final observer.
Which is the purusa, the soul, the seer. And here's the crucial point. Everything up to the purusa, the I, manas, buddhi, even the ego, is considered material. It's all part of nature, or prakriti, just made of finer and finer matter.
So even my intellect, my buddhi, is considered a material thing. That's a very different way of looking at it. What's the practical difference between the mind, manas, and the intellect, buddhi, that a yogi would observe?
The difference is really about function. Manas is like the mail clerk, just collecting all the letters from the senses and sorting them, often indecisively. Buddhi is the one who opens the letters and makes the decisions based on their content. The mind, manas, is just this constantly changing instrument that the soul uses to perceive the external world. The only thing that's not material, not changing, is the purusa, the silent witness behind it all.
Okay, so we have this intricate internal machine. And to perceive those subtle states you mentioned, the yogi has to turn this machine back on itself. How is that even possible? How can the mind steady the mind?
The instrument is the mind itself. And the mechanism that makes it possible is one word: concentration.
Right.
Think about the average person's mind. Its powers are scattered, dissipated. They're like weak, scattered rays of sunlight. You can't see anything clearly with that.
But if you focus that light,
If you gather those rays with a lens, they become incredibly powerful, penetrating, illuminating. All external science is basically just that concentrated mental energy applied to the outside world. Nature gives up her secrets if you know how to knock hard enough, and the force of the blow is concentration.
But with Raja Yoga, there's that unique problem. The subject and the object are the same thing. The mind has to study the mind. How do you stop it from just getting in its own way?
This is the real challenge, and the answer is cultivating the mind's reflective power. The yogi has to train the mind so that a part of it can stand back and act as an observer.
Like having a part of your mind watching what the other part is thinking.
Exactly. Imagine a portion of your mind just standing by, watching, knowing what the working part of your mind is doing, thinking, feeling.
That seems incredibly difficult to maintain.
It takes tremendous discipline. The mind's powers are concentrated, and then they're turned back on themselves. And just like a concentrated beam of light reveals what's in a dark room, this concentrated internal focus penetrates the mind's own secrets.
And if that concentration is successful, the whole process moves from belief to direct verification.
Precisely. If we can do this, we can perceive the truth of the soul, of eternity, of God for ourselves. We don't need faith or books anymore. It's all practical, all experimental. The goal is to get the mind to work only as we want it to focus its immense power at will.
So to build that kind of control, we need to understand the cosmic framework this is all based on. What are the fundamental building blocks of the universe in this system?
The entire universe, everything we experience, is said to be composed of just two fundamental materials. The first is the material basis, akasha.
Akasha, can you break that down for us?
Akasha is this infinite, omnipresent, all-penetrating, subtle existence. It's sometimes translated as ether, but that doesn't quite capture it. It's the raw material of everything.
So everything with a form.
Everything. Solids, liquids, air, plants, Our bodies, the planets, everything is just a compound that has evolved out of Akasha. In its pure state, it's too subtle to be perceived. It only becomes perceptible when forces act on it and it takes on a gross form.
And this is a cyclical process.
It is. The philosophy describes these huge cosmic cycles. At the end of a cycle, all the forms we see just melt back down into this primordial, subtle Akasha. And at the start of the next cycle, it all evolves out again.
So if Akasha is the passive substance, the cosmic clay, what's the force that shapes it?
That's the second primary material, prana.
Prana?
Prana is the infinite, omnipresent manifesting power of the universe. Just like all forms resolve back into Akasha, all the forces we see, gravity, electricity, everything, resolve back into prana at the end of a cycle.
So prana is the master energy. How broad is that definition? I mean, what's included?
Everything. Prana is the generalization of all force, mental and physical, with no exceptions. It's motion, gravity, magnetism, the power driving a steam engine, the nerve currents in your body, and even the very action of thought itself. Every force you can name is just a little wave on the infinite ocean of cosmic prana.
So the implications of controlling prana are, well, they're staggering. What does the source material say would happen if someone had perfect control over it?
The claims are just immense. They're beyond our current understanding of physics. The yogi who masters prana, it says, would be able to move the sun and stars out of their places to control everything in the universe, from the atoms to the biggest suns.
That reframes the whole spiritual goal, doesn't it? It's not about just being good or getting to heaven. It's about achieving total mastery over nature so its laws no longer bind you.
That is the ultimate ambition. But the starting point is very practical. We have to first learn to control the little wave of prana that is our own body and mind. That's the whole science of pranayama. By mastering the prana closest to us, we get a handle on the whole cosmic ocean.
It's interesting. How does this connect to things we see today, like, mind healers or hypnotists?
Yeah.
What are they doing if they're not consciously practicing Raja Yoga?
They are 100% unconsciously manipulating this prana force. They've stumbled upon a way to rouse and direct a little current of it. When a healer projects a feeling of health, they are literally transmitting their own concentrated prana, which then helps to activate the dormant prana in the patient.
And faith helps that process.
Faith is a powerful tool. It makes the patient's own mind receptive and helps it to rouse its own latent prana. The power is still internal to the patient, but the healer provides that external push, that directed wave of prana to get the process started. The yogi's advantage is doing it all consciously, understanding the mechanics.
So prana is behind everything. Let's look at its highest expression, which you said is thought itself.
Yes, thought is described as the finest and highest action of prana. And our experience of thought happens on three distinct planes. The lowest is instinct, or the unconscious.
The automatic stuff, reflexes.
Exactly. It's mechanical, necessary for survival. The second plane is the conscious plane. This is where we spend most of our time, reason, judgment, analysis. But the sources are very insistent that reason is severely limited.
Limited how?
Reason can only work within a very small, finite circle. But all the time, experiences and facts rush into that circle from outside it, things that defy logic. Science itself shows us that reason alone isn't enough to grasp ultimate reality.
Which means we need to get to the third and highest plane.
Which is the superconscious state, or Samadhi. This is the state where the mind is pushed beyond the limits of instinct and reason. By training the subtle forces of prana in the body, the mind can reach this higher state and come face to face with facts that reason can never, ever know.
There's a powerful analogy in the source material about vibration that helps explain this.
It's the analogy of light. We know there are light vibrations beyond what our eyes can see, like ultraviolet and infrared. Our senses are just tuned to a very specific band of vibration. In the same way, there are higher planes of prana vibration.
So we're just existing on one particular plane. If we could change our own vibrational rate.
The plane itself would change. The idea is that if you could consciously bring your mind to a quicker, finer vibration, you might start perceiving beings or realities that exist on that higher plane. And at the same time, this room, our conversation, it might all just vanish from your perception.
So everything from a rock to the human mind is just akasha vibrating at different speeds, powered by prana. And Samadhi is the technique to climb that ladder of vibration.
It's the scientific method for going beyond our current sensory and rational limits. All of those higher states of vibration are just grouped together under one word, Samadhi. Controlling our internal prana is the key to moving along that scale.
Okay, so with that cosmic picture in mind, let's focus back on the instrument itself, the internal mechanism, the antahkarana. How do all these concepts fit together?
Well, we mapped out the process. The senses, the collecting mind, manas, the determining intellect, buddhi, and the ego, ahamkara, all presenting their findings to the soul, the purusa.
Right. So where does the term chitta come into play?
Chitta is the foundation of it all. It's defined as the mind stuff. It's the material reservoir, the fundamental substance. Manas, buddhi, and ahamkara aren't separate things. They're just different processes or functions happening within this mind stuff, the chitta.
So chitta is the substance and the others are the actions. What about our actual thoughts, the individual thoughts we have?
Those are the vrittis. The word vrittis literally means whirlpool. They are the waves and ripples that arise on the surface of the chitta when something from the outside world hits it. A thought is basically a force that the chitta absorbs from nature and then projects as a specific wave. The universe we experience is really just a collection of these vrittis.
The ultimate goal of yoga is to stop these thought waves, these vrittis. And to explain why, the Source uses a really powerful analogy, the lake.
It's the best way to understand it. Imagine the chitta is a lake. The vrittis are all the waves and ripples on its surface, constantly stirring up the water. The true self, the purusa, is at the very bottom of that lake.
And you can't see the bottom if the water is choppy.
You can't see the bottom. You can't see your true nature. So the core definition of yoga from Patanjali is simply this: restraining the mind stuff, chitta, from taking various forms, vrittis. When the ripples stop, the seer, the purusa, can finally rest in its own pure, unmodified state.
To learn how to calm those waves, we have to understand what the mind stuff is made of. The three basic qualities of nature, the gunas.
Yes, these three qualities, tamas, rajas, and sattva, are in everything, in different proportions. First, you have tamas. This is darkness, inertia, dullness. When tamas is dominant, the mind is heavy, lazy, and often just acts to injure itself or others. It's the lowest state.
And there's rajas, which is the state of constant activity, right?
That's right. Rajas is all about motion, passion. It's driven by the desire for power and enjoyment, always striving, wanting to rule, wanting to have more. A mind stuck in rajas is very busy, but it's never, ever peaceful.
And the state the yogi wants to cultivate is sattva, which I think gets misunderstood as just being passive.
It absolutely does, but it's the opposite of passive. Sattva is serenity, calmness, illumination. But it's crucial to understand it is not inactivity. It is intensely active restraint. The source material makes this so clear. The greatest manifestation of power is to be calm.
That's a fascinating way to define power. We usually think of power as explosive, as action, as rajas.
We mistake motion for power. But think about it. It takes so much more strength to stop a team of runaway horses than to just let go of the reins and let them run wild. The calm person has mastered restraint, and that's a much higher, more powerful form of activity.
So cultivating sattva makes the mind steady and clear so the purusa can be seen.
Exactly. It allows the true self to be reflected perfectly without distortion.
Let's dig into what perception even is, because the yogi's view of reality is pretty radical.
It really is. We assume there's a table out there and our senses just take a perfect picture of it. But the yogi says no. Perception is the mind's reaction to an external suggestion. The universe outside is just the stimulus, just the grain of sand.
You mentioned the oyster analogy before. How does that work?
When a grain of sand gets into an oyster's shell and irritates it, the oyster reacts by covering it with a layer of enamel, and that creates a pearl. In the same way, the external universe is just that irritating grain of sand. The perception we have, the shape of the table, the sound of a voice, that's our mind's own enameling. The form isn't outside, it's our internal reaction to an external vibration.
Which means if 10 of us look at the same thing, we're actually having 10 slightly different internal experiences.
Precisely. We're reacting to the same stimulus, but our mental enamel, our chitta, is shaped by all our past experiences and memories, so it generates a slightly different vritti for each of us. This also explains why memory and even sleep are classified as vrittis.
How can memory be a ripple?
Memory, or smrti, is just a milder secondary vibration. When you remember a place you visited, your brain is experiencing a ripple of the same activity that was set up when you were actually there. It's a vritti based on a past impression.
And sleep. How can sleep, the absence of thought, be a ripple?
It's defined as the feeling of voidness. We only remember that we slept because there was a specific, subtle wave present in the mind during that time. If the chitta were truly blank, we'd have no memory of it. But we wake up and say, I slept well, or I slept badly. That means some kind of vritti, a feeling of comfort or disturbance, was present.
So all these ripples, perception, memory, joy, pain, They create the fundamental problem the yogi is trying to solve.
The central delusion is identification. We confuse the changing ripples, the vertices, with the unchanging lake bottom, the purusa. We say, I am angry, or I am happy. But the anger is just a wave reflected on the soul. The soul itself is pure, uncolored. And that confusion is what binds us to the whole cycle of pleasure and pain.
Okay, let's move into the practical steps then, the famous 8 limbs of Raja Yoga. Before any of the cool concentration stuff can happen, the foundation has to be moral. Why is that prerequisite so non-negotiable?
It's non-negotiable because the practices that come later involve generating and focusing enormous amounts of psychic energy. And the sources give this very serious warning. Trying to practice Raja Yoga without first establishing moral purity is dangerous and may lead to insanity.
Because if you have all this power, but you're still full of greed or hate,
You'll just use that power to make things 100 times worse for yourself and for everyone else. It's like giving a powerful weapon to someone who's unstable.
so the path begins with yama, which is internal purification, and niyama, self-regulation. Let's start with yama.
These are the 5 great moral commandments. It starts with ahimsa, non-injuring any living being in thought, word, or deed. Then sakyam, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-covetousness, and non-receiving, which means avoiding gifts that create dependence.
The one that gets the most emphasis, though, is brahmacharya, or perfect chastity.
Yeah.
Why is that considered so absolutely essential for spiritual power?
The yogi sees all energy as a form of prana that can be converted. The energy that's expressed in sexual function is a tremendously powerful force. When that energy is controlled and sublimated, meaning it's converted into a higher non-physical form, it becomes what's known as oshas.
Koshas. What is that exactly?
Oshas is the highest form of spiritual and intellectual energy, and it's stored primarily in the brain. The source material claims that the more oshas a person has, the more intellectually and spiritually powerful they become. It's the fuel for deep thought, for immense willpower.
So the demand for chastity isn't just some old-fashioned moral rule. It's a practical, psychological requirement for building up the mental fuel you need for the later stages.
Precisely. Without converting that energy, the mind simply lacks the sustained power it needs to turn back on itself and control the vertis. Trying to concentrate without a good store of oshas just leads to mental burnout and instability.
So after yama, we have niyama, the 5 rules of self-regulation.
These are the daily routines. They include cleanliness, both internal and external, contentment, mortification, which is self-discipline to strengthen the senses, study of uplifting texts, and finally, surrender to God or a higher principle. This last one is key to making sure the ego doesn't get inflated by all the power you're gaining.
Okay, with the moral foundation set, we get to the physical body, starting with asana, or posture. What's the main requirement here?
The posture has to be steady and comfortable, but the absolute key is that the body must be held straight. The chest, neck, and head have to be in one perfect line. The spinal cord especially has to be completely free and straight.
Why so much focus on the spine?
Because the spine is the main highway for all the psychic nerve currents we're about to work with. If it's crooked or slumped, it's like putting a kink in a hose. It blocks the flow of prana and makes the next steps impossible.
And the environment for practice matters too.
It's seen as a vital aid for calming the mind. You're told to find a place that's hidden, safe, clean away from noise and negativity. The idea is to have a dedicated holy room, so the moment you walk in, your mind gets the signal to quiet down.
And when you sit down in that quiet space, what's the very first thing you do mentally?
Before you even think about yourself, you have to perform a selfless act. You send a current of holy thought to all of creation. You repeat mentally, let all beings be happy, let all beings be peaceful.
Why is that the first step?
2 reasons. First, it purifies your own mind of any lingering selfishness or negativity. And second, it reinforces that the goal of the practice isn't just for your own benefit, it's universal. The only thing you should ever pray for is knowledge and light. Anything else is considered selfish.
Now we get to pranayama, controlling the vital current. We know it's not just about breathing, but about controlling prana. How does the breath act as the flywheel for the whole system?
The physical breath is the most accessible, gross manifestation of the subtle prana. Think of a big engine. The flywheel is a large, heavy wheel that regulates the power for all the smaller parts. In the same way, the rhythmic motion of your breath regulates all the subtle nerve currents in your body. By controlling the big, obvious motion of the breath, you gain indirect control over the finer internal currents of prana that power your thoughts and will.
And this practice focuses intensely on the psychic nerves within the spinal column.
That's the core of the physiology here. The yogis identified three main psychic currents in the spine. On the left is Ida, and on the right is Pingala. These carry our normal sensory and motor nerve signals, but between them, running right through the center of the spine, is a hollow canal called the Susumna.
And for most people, what's the state of the central channel, the Susumna?
It's completely closed, it's dormant, all our energy just runs up and down Ida and Pingala, dealing with the external world. The whole purpose of pranayama is to forcibly awaken and open the Susumna and divert all our prana into that central channel.
And where does the energy to do that come from?
It comes from the kundalini. This is described as this immense coiled-up reservoir of residual power that sits at the very base of the spine in a center called the Muladhara. The goal is to wake up this sleeping power and compel it to force its way up the Susumna.
As the Kundalini rises through that central channel, what's the experience?
As it rises, it forces open various subtle energy centers, or chakras, that are located along the spine. As each center opens, a new layer of the mind opens up. You gain new knowledge, new perceptions, supersensuous powers.
And the final destination.
When the Kundalini finally reaches the brain, the center known as the Sahakrara, the thousand-petaled lotus, the soul finds itself completely free. It's described as a full blaze of illumination, a direct perception of the self.
To start this incredible process, the sources give a very specific breathing practice.
Yes. A classic rhythm for purification is to inhale slowly through the left nostril, the Ida. Then you hold the breath, which is called kumbhaka, while you focus your mind intensely on that Muladhara center at the base of the spine. Then finally, you exhale slowly through the right nostril, the Pingala.
And there's a specific ratio, isn't there? The 4.16.8 ratio.
That's a common one. If you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 16, and you exhale for 8. The intensity is all in that holding phase, the kumbhaka. That's what builds the internal heat and pressure needed to start waking up the Kundalini.
Given how powerful this is supposed to be, the cautions must be pretty severe.
Absolutely. The practice has to be slow, cautious, and regular. You increase the time you hold the breath very, very gradually. If you're aggressive or irregular with it, you can seriously damage your nervous system, which is why the moral foundation of yama and niyama is so essential before you even attempt this.
So if someone practices correctly, what are the first observable signs of progress?
The very first signs are physical and behavioral. The face starts to change. The hard lines of stress and struggle soften into a look of calmness. The voice becomes more beautiful, more resonant. The source says, I never saw a yogi with a croaking voice. The whole person just starts to exude peace.
And after that, the psychic glimpses begin.
Yes, the initial psychic abilities, the siddhis, start to show up. Things like reading thoughts or hearing distant events or perceiving beautiful smells that aren't physically there. These are important mainly as proof that the method is working, that supersensuous perception is real.
But the sources warn that these powers are not the goal.
They are just signposts along the way. They confirm you're on the right path, but if you get distracted by them, you stop moving. The real goal is to fully arouse the Kundalini, because when that happens, your own mind becomes the ultimate book of knowledge containing everything you need to know.
With the prana currents regulated, we move completely inward to the next stage. Pratyahara. This is about withdrawing the senses.
Pratyahara is about freeing the mind from its slavery to the senses. Normally, our mind is a total slave. It sees something beautiful, and boom, willingly or not, it attaches itself to that sense organ. It wants it. We do foolish things because our mind is just automatically reacting to the outside world.
So the goal is to get the mind to choose not to engage, even when the beautiful object is right there. That sounds almost impossible given how restless the mind is.
It is incredibly difficult, and the source uses this famous, vivid analogy of a maddened monkey to describe the mind. The mind is naturally restless, like a monkey. Then it drinks the wine of desire, making it even more restless. Then it gets stung by the scorpion of jealousy, so it's just jumping around wildly. And finally, the demon of pride enters it. That's the human mind we're trying to control.
So how do you even begin to tame a force like that?
The first lesson is paradoxical. You have to let it run. Let the monkey jump as much as he can. You simply wait and watch. You have to become a detached observer of your own mind, watching its craziest thoughts come and go without judging them.
So knowledge is power here. You have to know what your mind is doing before you can control it.
You have to. You patiently watch its patterns, its habits, its ugliest thoughts, and slowly, day by day, its wildness lessens until it comes under your perfect voluntary control. The mind only goes where you direct it to go.
And it's critical this control is voluntary, right? You warned about non-voluntary methods earlier.
It's a huge warning. Things like relying on hypnotic suggestion from someone else only work on a weak mind. Any kind of non-voluntary control where you surrender your will to an outside source just rivets one link more to the already existing heavy chain of bondage.
Because it takes away your freedom, which is the whole point.
Precisely. The yogi seeks mastery from within, never from without.
Okay, once the mind is detached from the senses through Pratyahara, we get to the final three limbs, which are often practiced together. The first is Dharana.
Dharana is concentration. It's the act of confining the mind stuff, the citta, to one single point, either internal or external. It's the initial act of forcing the mind to hold steady.
What are some examples of points to focus on?
You could force the mind to feel only your hand, to the exclusion of everything else. Or, more commonly, you use a visualization. A very powerful one is to imagine a lotus full of brilliant light inside your heart or in your brain at the point they call the sakurara, the thousand-petaled lotus.
And when that focus becomes effortless, it flows into the next stage, Dhyana.
Yes, Dhyana is meditation. That's when your mind can flow in an unbroken current toward that single point of focus. The flow of consciousness toward that imaginary lotus becomes smooth and continuous, like pouring oil from one jar to another. There are no breaks.
And the peak of that unbroken flow is the final limb, Samadhi.
Samadhi is the superconscious state. This is when the meditation is so intense that the mind is able to completely reject the external part of perception and meditate only on the internal part, the meaning itself. The feeling of I am meditating disappears. The mind is just working above the normal plane of consciousness.
The sources group these three stages together, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, when they're applied to a single object. What is that combined practice called?
It's called samyama, and samyama is the yogi's ultimate tool. By conquering samyama, the yogi gains the light of knowledge. This isn't just abstract knowledge, it's practical control over the very fabric of the mind.
What do you mean by that? What kind of control?
It's described as control over a threefold transformation of the mind stuff. Control over form, meaning how the citta turns into thought waves. Control over time, holding the mind in the present moment. And control over state, being able to consciously make the mind go from a gross, turbulent state back to a subtle, calm one.
So by mastering samyama on different objects, the yogi can understand their essential nature.
That's the idea. Patanjali explains that ordinary perception mixes up three things: the external sound or form, the meaning carried by the nerve current, and the mental reaction that gives us the knowledge. In Samadhi, the yogi learns to separate these. They can meditate just on the meaning, or ultimately just on the pure knowledge itself, free of any object.
And this is where that omniscient knowledge comes from.
It is. Once you understand the basic mechanism of your own mind, you understand the basis of everything. And the knowledge gained in this state is transformative. A person can go into Samadhi a fool and come out a sage, because the knowledge gained here fulfills reason. It never contradicts it.
As the yogi gains this control through samyama, these powers, the siddhis, start to manifest. Before we talk about the final liberation, we have to address why these powers are considered a temptation. How can they even arise in the first place?
The sources say there are 5 ways you can get these powers. By birth, from past spiritual work, by chemical means, like the ancient alchemists, by the power of sacred words or mantras, by extreme asceticism, and finally through concentration, samadhi, which is the highest and best way.
So if samadhi is the best way to get them, why are they called obstacles to samadhi?
Because they tempt the yogi to stay engaged with the world, even if it's the subtle world. Gaining the power to hear divine sounds or enter someone else's body or become invisible, these are incredible powers from a worldly perspective, but they are external to the ultimate goal.
How do they stop your progress?
The moment the yogi thinks, oh, I'll use this power to help someone, or I'll use this for my own enjoyment, they've reattached themselves to the world of cause and effect. They've chosen to remain identified with nature, with Prakriti, and they've just delayed their final liberation. The real goal isn't power over the universe, it's freedom from it.
To really get why that's so important,
Mm-hmm.
we have to go back to the fundamental difference between the soul and nature. What is the Purusa at its core?
The Purusi is defined as intelligence only. It's unchangeable, pure, and eternally separate from everything else. The mind, the body, the intellect, all of that is part of nature, Prakriti. It's all composite, all changing. The Purusha is the only eternal, simple thing in the universe.
But if the Purusa is pure and unchanging, how does it seem to experience happiness or misery?
It's just a reflection. The analogy used is a pure, clear crystal. If you place a red flower next to it, the crystal looks red. But the redness isn't part of the crystal, it's just a reflection. In the same way, the suffering we feel is just the reflection of the mind's turbulent waves, the vertices, being mistaken for the reality of the soul.
This implies that nature itself has a very specific purpose in relation to the soul.
It has one and only one purpose. The entire existence of nature, with all its complexity, is solely for the Purusha to gain experience and eventually to realize its own absolute independence from nature.
So nature's like a teacher.
A kind nurse or a teacher, exactly. The whole cosmic drama exists just to force the soul to wake up and realize its case of mistaken identity. It's like a king who dreams he's a beggar. The goal of yoga is to wake him up so he realizes, I am not the beggar, I am the king. Once that realization is total, nature's job is done for that particular soul.
And this final realization happens through the highest form of concentration. How does the yogi go from a concentration that generates power to one that generates total liberation?
It's the difference between two stages of samadhi. The first stage is samprajnata samadhi, which means concentration with seed. In this state, the yogi successfully calms the active thought waves, the vrittis, and achieves great peace.
But the seeds of future action are still there, dormant.
Exactly. The underlying tendencies from all your past actions, the samskaras, are still there like seeds buried in the soil. If you lose your concentration, they'll sprout again, leading to more actions, more attachments, and more rebirths. It's not final freedom.
So the ultimate goal must be a samprajnata samadhi, the seedless state.
This is the highest state. It's achieved by constantly and actively destroying all mental impressions, even the latent ones. The training involves reaching a point where no thought at all enters the mind. It's like creating an entire vacuum in the chitta. It takes unbelievable strength and willpower.
And because this samadhi is seedless, it burns up all those past tendencies for good.
It obstructs and eventually destroys all the seeds of past actions. And when that last seed is gone, the soul achieves kaivalya.
Kaivalya. What does that mean in this final sense?
It means isolation. It's the final resolution. The Purusha realizes its complete and utter independence. It realizes it is the only eternal, simple thing in the universe, immortal, indestructible, the essence of intelligence. And the ultimate wisdom is realizing that the soul neither came nor went. It was nature which was moving, and that movement was merely reflected upon the soul.
The bondage was never real, just a reflection. So when the soul achieves this freedom, what is its relationship to the universe then?
When this free soul commands, whatever it desires is immediately fulfilled. Nature's work is finished. The kind nurse has taught the child, and she quietly goes away to help others who are still learning. The individual has transcended causality and realized their own infinite potential.
This is such a massive undertaking, from basic morals all the way to cosmic control. It obviously demands incredible perseverance. The source material uses one last anecdote to get that attitude across.
It does. It's the analogy of the pearl oyster. The oyster has to wait for a specific type of raindrop to fall. It has to hear the truth, understand it, and then it has to shut its shell to all other outside influences, all the distractions and noise, and just patiently devote itself to developing the pearl of truth within.
That's an immense level of willpower.
It's absolute. The soul that succeeds is the one who says, I will drink the ocean, and at my will, mountains will crumble. It requires that kind of energy, that kind of unwavering will. Raja Yoga as a science is just a method to shorten the time it takes to achieve in one lifetime what might otherwise take millions of ages of slow evolution.
So we've completed this exhaustive deep dive. We've gone from the science of spiritual realization through the subtle energies of prana and akasha, the internal machine of the chitta, the 8 limbs of the practice, all the way to the ultimate freedom of the Purusha in Kaivalya.
It's a profound system, I think, because it really tries to take faith out of the equation and puts all the power and all the responsibility right back on the individual's own effort and will.
So for a final thought to leave with everyone, let's go back to those cosmic laws we talked about. Specifically, the law that says every motion is circular, that every impulse has to complete a circuit and come back to where it started.
Right. If that's true, that everything from a nebula to a thought has to return to its source, then the implication is just immense. Every single impulse of hatred or love, every thought of kindness or injury that you send out from your mind must eventually come back to you. With full force, nothing can stop it.
So governing every single thought isn't just a nice moral idea. It's a universal necessity, dictated by the laws of cosmic energy. Internal purity is, quite literally, the foundation for universal power.
An immense idea to internalize, for sure. Thank you for taking this journey with us through the science of conquering the internal nature.
If you found insight in this exploration of such a complex philosophy, be sure to like and subscribe to The Deep Dive for more journeys into challenging subjects.
Until next time, keep seeking the truth in your own experience. And remember, the oyster's perseverance.